Welcome in. And today I'm going to talk about the tank buster problem. Now, if you watched my previous content, I will say this. I did make a video about how tanks react a bit overly to a few things. And I'll say this for it before going to the video. Someone can still overreact while there is a problem. In my opinion, people overreact because there is a problem. That is the main cause of overreacting. But just with a couple things. This, I think, is a lot more valid. Now, let's get straight into it. Throughout the history of Marvel Rivals, even dating back to Season 0, in my opinion, every single character that has been added has some sort of anti-tank ability. Maybe not every, but the large majority of them. And pre-established characters even as far as back as Season 0. They have gotten tank wiping abilities or tank percentile damage. Look at Iron Fist. He has percentile. Look at Wolverine. He has percentile. Both of them have been getting buffs. Both of them have been meta. In my opinion, those two really shouldn't ever go into the meta. And as a support player, I play probably support more than the other two roles, maybe. And every time in competitive, whenever I see a Wolverine on the enemy team, I heavily comp my tanks. I remember in a certain match, which was the Dracula match, I think, Loki and my team tanks were Strange and Mag, something like that. And the Wolverine, we were on defense, kept trying to go to a high ground on the left to drop down and grab them. I kept calming every single time. Wolverine's about to grab you. Wolverine's about to grab you. They would step to the side or bubble themselves. And they're like, oh my god, those are amazing comps. Thank you. And that just on its own proves tank players do not like playing against Wolverine. Hell, I don't when I'm playing tank. It's a horrible experience. Especially if there's any other displacement ability, which, you know, let's say Strange. He pulls you in, you shift, then there's like an invis pull or something like that. Or like a Elsa with her dash. With all these little boops, it's disabling your movement ability. She's just stuck with the tank buster, to be fully honest. And there's nothing you can really do since you don't move faster than them. Sometimes with Iron Fist, he auto locks onto you. Trust me, that's a horrible experience in no matter what role, but especially tank, which if the enemy supports are pocketing that one brawler after you, that tank buster, there's nothing you can do. I know whenever I'm playing support, I just pump heals into that tank buster on the enemy tank. The enemy tank just disintegrates. No matter if you have both of the enemy supports on them, they disintegrate. And yes, it's a viable thing to do, but in this game, I don't think unfun strats or unfun abilities or unfun characters should be in the game. Or if they are, not nearly as strong as they are right now. Because if I asked you guys, who loves being hard targeted? Who loves being displaced? Who loves being stun locked? You definitely would not raise your hand or definitely would not say yes to that thing right there. And especially with now recent characters like Black Cat, her ult is percentile damage. She can pretty much wipe out a tank in like less than 5 seconds with her ult and then refresh it for another 10 seconds. Her ult is just like a better Bucky ult in certain circumstances. She's like the worst parts to face of Black Panther and Bucky at the same time, along with the tank busting aspect. And just to focus more on those three, why change characters of how they were? Why not just improve what they were good at before instead of changing their whole entire playstyle? More so Wolverine and Iron Fist, but mostly Iron Fist to be fully honest. And especially with all the anti-heals in the game right now, those, in my opinion, heavily target tanks. There's an argument even more than actual supports themselves. With all the increased vulnerabilities, again, increase the risk to tanks more than any other role in my opinion. In this game, it's heavily balanced around pure damage and pure healing. But if you heavily lower the healing, suddenly there's a balance that starts to snowball. Sure, there are increased healing abilities, but it's nothing like 40% or 40% for Venom and Blade. There is a lot more anti-heal, increased vulnerability than there ever has been and ever was for increased healing. So we're just getting more lopsided games, which is making a harder experience for tanks and supports. Because if you can't do your job, and if you're getting pretty much a crutch on the job you're supposed to do, you're gonna fall flat. Even the best of players, if you're given this increased vulnerability, no matter how good of positioning you are, if you're the #1 in the world in terms of positioning, you'll still get bulldozed because of all of the features with the increased vulnerability, with all the anti-heal. Not even counting, the anti-heal works and the increased vulnerability works with the percentile damage tanks have to deal with. It's like, well, do you want want the rest of them to die? Like, is that what the devs or DPS players want? That everyone else should vaporize because they want to be the game admin? This game has been shifting more and more and more into the DPS side of things, the more damage side of things. Even your own tanks have been against tanks. Look at Thor. He can U-turn with his push. That should not be in the game in my opinion. Because, oh, let's say you're Strange. You get pulled in by him, you hit shift, nope, he pulls you right back down. I think it's like 2 or 3 seconds later, he pushes you again, and again, and again, and again. And he can U-turn, so if you even make a little bit of movement, nope, you're right back into the enemy team. There's nothing your supports can do about that. Unless, for example, you have a very good Loki player who puts his runes right next to a corner where the enemy can't take it, and you keep getting put in those. But still, there's really nothing you can do. Invis push and pull, nope, Thor just gets it right back. What about Penny? She heavily limits tanks' movement. What about Rogue? She just stuns you on the ground, and now she can CC you to hell. But I'm glad the tenacity system is in, so you tanks can't get CC to hell by her anymore. With the Hulk change too, beforehand, you guys would get CC to hell, not be able to do really anything about that. Now you can't with the tenacity system. I love that. You guys are less affected by these CCs. That's a good change. A change you guys asked for. But now we're just leaning more and more into a bad meta in terms of damage compared to healing. The game was always balanced around healing versus damage. That's not saying the game was balanced. I'm just saying that's the way they tried to balance it. But we are leaning more and more and more season by season to season to a DPS damage meta. I mean, even if you just purely look at the alt changes, and DPS had one of the lowest, and with this comes more team fights which start to snowball because of how high the damage is. More DPS alts, which guess what? They're mostly after supports. Guess what's in their way? Tank players. If you're in the way protecting your support, you're getting evaporated. There is no good healing which can save you from a Punisher ult. That is a simple fact right there. No matter what people have to say, if you do not have a support ult, you are not getting saved from a Punisher ult. Unless you're like a Loki with a rune, but even then, that can only buy you some time. Good luck if there's 2 DPS ults out there. And with characters like Wolverine, who got a 600 ult decrease, which is now tied with Moon Knight with the second lowest ult cost in the game, that is a horrible experience. Like, you're getting ulted. I remember a game where Wolverine ulted like every team fight. This was, of course, before the 20% ult decrease, but even still, I think it was like he has less than 5% more ult cost than before the buff, meaning that 600 he got was around 20%. So pretty much they decreased it by 600, then increased it by 600. He is right where he used to be while everyone else got a 20% decrease. That doesn't really sound super fair to you guys, right? And Venom too as well. Venom with the lowest ult in the entire game with 2,500, then Moon Knight with 2,800 tied with Wolverine. Wolverine and Moon Knight, their whole gameplay is heavily focused on the tanks. Other than if you're Moon Knight taking off angles, trying to destroy the enemy backline. I've had games, every single game pretty much, if I'm playing a Groot, the enemy team, if I win one team fight, switches to a Lord Moon Knight and just perma looks at me all game. And no matter what cover I get, I'm just a walking unk. And I cannot play Groot in quick play. And I'm not counter swapping either in quick play. I want to learn characters in quick play and actually get Lord on them in quick play. But it's like unfun. Look at somebody else. That's like, look at someone else. I don't know how many times I've said that during my games. It's so annoying when you're just heavily focused. It's like when I'm playing support and there's 2 dives or 1 dive on me at constant times. It's annoying to deal with that. Nothing even compares to the DPS side. They don't deal with anything like this compared to tank and support. And with Venom too, he heavily benefits on how much health you have. Hell, he can have like over 1,000 AP. I think even 2,000 if I remember correctly, just purely based on him. And this is just a horrible and unfair and unfun thing to go against game after game after game, especially if you're solo tank. I've always said solo tank is hard. It's not a fun experience. I do think, in my opinion, it is a slightly overreacted upon, but I do think it is still a very unfun thing to go against at certain times, especially if you're hard focused. Sometimes it can feel like a breeze. It's like, oh, I'm not really doing anything, but my team is really just pushing forward. Other times it's like, okay, this is hell. I cannot push forward at all. Feels like there's no middle ground. And if you have one of these percentile damage or tank focuser characters, even Squirrel Girl for a matter of fact, if you're like a Groot, she have a giant hitbox and she can barely aim, even with the player herself, and you just perma being hit by like hundreds of damage per hit. That is just not fun. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next YouTube video. See ya.